Let's be real. The way we work is being completely transformed right before our eyes. The gig economy, remote work, freelancing, these aren't just buzzwords anymore. They're the reality for millions of people. But with all this new flexibility, there's also a ton of uncertainty. So today, we're going to create a guide for you to navigate this new world, and maybe most importantly, to understand your rights within it.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Take a look at this. This is the office now. Partly physical, partly virtual, a hybrid of people in a room and people on screens. That traditional 9 to 5 job, with one company for 30 years, yeah, that's quickly becoming a thing of the past. And while that opens up some incredible new possibilities, it also basically tears up the old rulebook.
And that really is the heart of the matter, isn't it? It's the big question we're tackling today. When your job doesn't come with a long-term contract, what happens to your health insurance? What about your retirement plan? Or even just the basic legal protections you might have taken for granted? This isn't some abstract debate. We're talking about your actual, real-world financial security here. To find some answers, we've got to understand the new landscape first. So our little tour is going to start with what the experts call the contingent workforce. It's a massive and growing part of our economy, so let's get to know the key players involved. So what in the world is a contingent worker? Well, the Bureau of Labor Statistics defines it pretty simply. The key phrase here is the lack of a contract for ongoing employment. It means your job is temporary, it's project-based, or it's just, well, not permanent. So, this massive workforce gets broken down into 4 main groups. We're going to walk through each one, because figuring out which category you might fall into, that's the first step to knowing what your rights really are. First up, we've got part-time employees. The definition is pretty straightforward. You work less than 35 hours a week. But here's the important bit. The difference between voluntary, meaning you chose to work part-time, and involuntary, which is when you'd actually rather have a full-time job but just can't find one. And get this number kind of blows up a common myth. A whopping 80% of part-time workers actually choose that arrangement for non-economic reasons. So it's not just about people struggling to find full-time work. For a huge number of them, it's about wanting more flexibility and more control over their lives. Next, we've got our temporary and on-call workers. You can think of them as the workforce's reinforcements, right? They're the ones called in to cover for someone who's on leave, or to help a company get through a sudden busy season or a specific short-term project. Now, this is where it starts to get a little weird. Leased employees. These are folks who might work at a company for a year, maybe even longer. They look and feel just like a regular employee, but, and this is a big but, they are legally employed by a totally separate leasing agency. This creates something called a co-employment relationship, which, as you can imagine, gets really confusing when you start talking about benefits. And finally, we have the independent contractors, the freelancers, the consultants. These are the true solo acts of the workforce. They're self-employed, they often have really specialized skills, and they operate with a ton of autonomy, taking on specific gigs or projects as they see fit. All right, so now that we've met all the players, let's get to the real heart of it all, the benefits puzzle. When you're not a classic full-time employee, who is actually responsible for your safety net? This chart really shows how that responsibility shakes out in 2 of these setups. For a temp worker, it's pretty simple. The agency is the legal employer. But for a leased employee, that legal responsibility is actually shared between the leasing company and the client. It's that co-employment thing we mentioned. And trust me, that distinction matters a whole lot. Now, the rules are, very slowly, starting to catch up with this new reality. A perfect example is the Secure Act. This law was a huge deal because it basically forced companies to give long-term, part-time workers access to their retirement plans, something that was almost unheard of before. It just goes to show you that new laws can really make a difference. For independent contractors, pretty much everything hangs on whether you're classified correctly. And the courts use these 3 main tests to figure that out. But it really all boils down to 2 key ideas: control and dependence. If a company tells you exactly how, when, and where to do your job, and you're financially dependent on them, well, you might legally be an employee, no matter what your contract says. Okay, let's switch gears. We've talked about the who of the workforce, now let's talk about the where. Because this remote revolution has changed everything, and it comes with its own unique set of rules and rights. These 2 pictures tell the whole story, don't they? On the left, you've got the old school office, a physical place you go to. And on the right, you have the new reality, a network of people connected by technology. The very idea of a workplace has just been completely redefined. Of course, this revolution is a bit of a double-edged sword. Companies, they love the lower costs and the potential for more productivity. But trying to manage and evaluate a team that's scattered all over the place, that's a real challenge. And for employees, the freedom is amazing, but the isolation and that blurring of work-life boundaries, that can be a total nightmare. So, if your home is now your office, what kind of safety net do you actually have? Are you protected if something goes wrong? Let's take a look. Okay, this is a big one. A lot of people just assume that if they get hurt at home, they're on their own. But workers' comp laws often do apply. There's just a really critical catch. The incident has to happen while you are performing your job duties. And as you can imagine, that line can get pretty blurry, which is why all the details matter so much. So to navigate all this, companies are putting clear policies in place. They're creating guidelines for what a safe home office should look like, and they're setting up fixed work hours. This isn't just about them trying to avoid lawsuits. It's also about protecting you and helping to build a clear line between your job and your personal life. Wow, we have covered a massive amount of ground. So what's the most important thing to take away from all this? It really comes down to one thing. You have to know your status. Because that knowledge, that's your power. Let's just do a quick recap with this first chart. As you can see, plain as day, your access to benefits is completely tied to your classification. A leased employee gets benefits from their leasing agency, but an independent contractor, they're on their own for everything. You have to know which box you're in. And this second chart highlights that other critical piece of the puzzle, control. Generally, the more control a company has over your work, the more responsibility they have for you. That high degree of autonomy is what really defines an independent contractor and legally separates them from everybody else on this list. And all of this leaves us with one final and really crucial question. The old social contract, where you worked for one company for a long time and they provided a safety net, that's falling apart. So in this new world of work, who is responsible? Is it up to every single person to figure it out for themselves? Should the government be stepping in? Or do we need to invent a totally new system to match this new way we're all working? That right there is the challenge ahead for all of us.